The opportunity that exists for Australia-India relationships, particularly through the National Education Policy. And we in Australia are looking forward to working with other Australian institutions in the models and in the ways that Deakin has been able to demonstrate is possible here in India. So Australia has a great reputation here in India as a quality education provider. Australia does offer some fabulous educational experiences and some world-leading qualifications. And we have been a popular destination for international students. As time goes on, we look further to being able to provide more Australian qualifications here in India through transnational education partnerships and through important opportunities for research engagement and Australian and Indian institutions working together on areas of priority and concern for both our nations. I think the Deakin experience here in India is a great example of how that works. Certainly, Australia and India relationship has never been better. And we look at building relationships between people as a way of consolidating relationships between nations. And we see education as absolutely central to development of those relationships.
And truly global. In fact, Takshashila at its peak had over 10,000 students and faculty from different parts of the world, and it was also truly multidisciplinary in nature. Both the evolution of the colonialism, but also at the dawn of independence when we had 20 universities, today we have 1,000 universities. There has been extraordinary expansion in the Indian higher education system. So for Australia and for Deakin, when it thinks about coming to India and engaging with India, I would like you to recognize the fact that Indian subcontinent and civilization had an extraordinary contribution to the development of knowledge, and those aspects continues even today. The second dimension about the India-Australia dialogue is also critical. It's not just about cricket. We both are pluralistic democracies, and there is something about pluralistic democracies coming together in building partnership that can transform the future of the world. The Honorable Union Education Minister talked about an important data point with regard to students at the age group of 15 to 25, and that's 250 million. And that's of course a staggering number. Let me add another important staggering number, which is that at the dawn of Indian independence, the life expectancy was approximately 35, and today it is 71. India, out of the 1.35 billion people, has nearly 850 million people who are less than 35 years of age. And the reason I mentioned the less than 35 years of age is that this 850 million people, I believe, are going to be shaping not just the future of India, but the future of the world. That also means that we need to invest in education, and this investment in education, including our aspiration to increase the gross enrollment ratio, simply cannot be done without international partnerships and collaborations with leading universities around the world, especially in Australia, and that is where the Deakin India partnership and the collaborations with the hubs that has been established in some of the leading Indian institutions becomes critical. The third aspect of it is that, which again the Honorable Minister touched about, which is the fact that one of the big challenges that India is facing today is that how do you ensure quality and quantity? We have a challenge of educating a large number of people, and one of the biggest challenges, and an inspiring data point which I learned from Ian yesterday when he visited the campus, is that Deakin has 65,000 students. I mean, just grapple with that number, because here's something that we in India have to learn, because the Indian model largely has been premier institutions which are far less student numbers and significant investment going to that center for educating such a small group of people. Here we have Deakin, and I'm sure other Australian universities, where there are large student numbers, educating a large number of Australians and international students, yet maintaining quality and have a deep commitment to excellence, something that India has to significantly recognize. While we expand the education sector, we need help and support from institutions such as Deakin, in which the access to education in India need to be recognized. A large number of Indians simply will not be in a position to afford education, not just in Deakin, even in private universities such as Jindal and Symbiosis and Chitkara. Even after providing scholarships, the reality is a large number of young Indians simply will not be able to afford. We need to become creative in the process of implementing the vision of the NEP, in which we are able to provide significant scholarships and fellowships so that accessibility to education for a large number of young Indians can be created. The larger vision of Deakin India Partnership has to recognize that accessibility, inclusivity, equity are equally important in our effort to promote excellence. With those words that it has already made in the larger Indian higher education sector, I know several people have worked tirelessly hard, led by Ian Martin and Ramneet Pava and all the deans and the faculty members and the administrative staff of Deakin University. We in India need to learn a lot about institutional approach towards building partnerships that Deakin has demonstrated. And with those words, I want to once again congratulate the partner institutions which are present here and also thank Deakin for its presence. I also want to end by saying that the presence of the Honorable Union Education Minister is deeply inspiring, that we have a strong ally in the government who not only hears us but is prepared to change and reimagine the future of Indian higher education. We are deeply fortunate for his leadership and his far-sighted vision that is already impacting the Indian higher education sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
आपको वहीं बुला रहे हैं अन्य को वहीं ले आएंगे वहीं ले
कॉलेज में बीच में बातचीत हुई है तो मैं आता हूँ बहुत अच्छा आता हूँ कभी पर मैं फिर एक बार क्या मैं फिर भी तो वो उनको मोटे लोग उड़ीसा के
both the countries are partnering, and in a way both the countries are helping each other in excelling on a global stage. And I'm joined by a very esteemed panel for this discussion. I have obviously Sara with me, who is Deputy Australian High Commissioner to India. Sara, thank you so much for joining us. I have Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, who is Distinguished Fellow at Vivekananda International Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. I'm also joined by Professor Ian Martin, who is President and Vice Chancellor of Deakin University. Hi, Martin. And I'm joined by Dr. C. Rajkumar, Vice Chancellor of OP Jindal University. Thank you, sir, for joining us. So, I think let me start with Sara. Sara, we were just speaking before the session started how other countries are working together, and education is one area where the ties have been really thick. Our education minister also traveled to Australia, and he's so passionate about this whole bilateral cooperation that's happening between both the countries. So if you can just give us an overview in terms of how the relationship with focus on education has evolved over a period of time.
Thank you so much for here. It's a real pleasure to be here today, and thank you. It's wonderful to see so many faces in the room, and I know there are also people watching online. So thank you for your interest, because as the daughter of educators, but now a diplomat, education is something I'm very passionate about. It is absolutely a central pillar of our relationship, and one of my jobs as a diplomat is to explain why that matters in terms of our relationships. So we have a comprehensive strategic partnership. It's been elevated to that level, and it's just extraordinary to see the level of engagement across the board. And I see education as the flagship of our soft pillar, our soft diplomacy and our people-to-people ties. It is something on which both of our natural interests align. India in itself has 1 million 18-year-olds every month, and just such an extraordinary percentage of its population is under 40. This demographic dividend has some challenges and some opportunities, but we have some challenges and opportunities in this field too. We have skills shortages, and we know that to make the Indo-Pacific a more prosperous region, a more secure region, and one that is ruled by, I can see my fellow lawyer here nodding, this is excellent, by rules and good order, we can really work to leverage off each other in terms of driving the education links. And this is not just straight up education, it's about how we drive our research and our collaboration, our innovation to make us more competitive and each of us and stronger partners. Thank you.
Right. Sarah, also, if you look at international education, obviously it's one of the largest, in fact, the largest services export when it comes to Australia. So, you know, in a way, the way our relation between India and Australia will evolve over a period of time in the education sector is also going to play a very crucial role in the bilateral trade. So it's directly linked to the economic cooperation that both countries.
Engagement from across the two nations with alumni organisations such as NITI Aayog. And I'd like to make a very special mention of our 2022 IAPCA Lifetime Achievement Award honoree, Ambassador Anil Wadhwa, who was honoured in Australia earlier this year. A round of applause. Going forward, as I said, with the India piece, we are going to have this award ceremony take place in Australia 1 year and in India 1 year. And thanks to our India education partner, Deakin University, I want everyone to be part of the journey and share your success stories. Because the specific focus is across skilling and education in 2023, we want to make sure that your journeys are told in Australia and here. Your case studies are shared through the platform extensively because these case studies are used by the public and private sector very often. APCA works with leading business chambers and government organisations on an ongoing basis, and I invite all of you to the event in February of 2023, but most importantly, invite you to enter, engage across the awards platform, which has 12 categories. You're all a reinforcement of what skills, network, and talent can achieve for both our countries. And every bilateral relationship begins with people. And you are the people who are playing an instrumental role in making this relationship what it is today. So for that, thank you. And on behalf of our APCA India education partner, Deakin University, I thank you for listening. And as I grow older and wiser, I seem to realize that time is one of the most unrenewable resources. So I thank you for giving me 5 minutes of it today. Thank you very much.
Prime Minister of Australia. The Terry-Deakin relationship is a friendship, partnership that has been nurtured over the decade now. The joint centre that we are inaugurating today is looking at Deakin Centre with Terry on excellence in agriculture and environment around research and innovation. The Centre of Excellence is and always has been a flagship initiative for both Deakin and Terry. Through the centre, Terry brings to the table the core capability of knowledge creation, development of efficient, environment-friendly technologies with Deakin University's India Research Initiative on establishing and looking at associations with industry to partner around the very important themes of agriculture and environment. The key objectives of this Terry Centre of Excellence is to carry out high-impact research addressing global and local challenges in the field of agriculture and environment, alongside building on critical mass of future research leaders in these specialist areas. I would now like to request my Vice Chancellor and Dr. Vibha Dhawan to please sign the agreement. And I'd also like to invite my colleagues, Professor Bhaskaran, and also from Terry, and also please join us for the signing. This partnership currently has more than 20 PhD students who are jointly based between Deakin in Australia and Terry in India, and I think this is one of a very strong commitment to India to look at how we can work together in the areas that are critically important to both our nations. Mr. Kiran Kumar is going to be the Center Director, and we are really looking forward to working with you, Mr. Kumar.
I think we show it
I
that way.
want
Is it?
us
Yeah.
to open it.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Congratulations to Deakin and to Terry. Really looking forward to strengthening this strong partnership in research and innovation.
So look forward to it. Great to be ready.
And as you rightly mentioned, that we had a decade-old relationship which we thoroughly enjoyed. I'll just like to tell you what we have done in the first phase. We have set up one of the best centers, and I can say perhaps best in Asia, for nanobiotechnology research. So it's a joint center established in the outskirts of Delhi, Delhi's campus. It is the Delhi Deakin Nanobiotechnology Center. We started with research because one of the things we always say that for the progress of any country, it is the research, it's the innovating nations which progress the best. We also look at technologies, and it is not that any country will have expertise in every field. And therefore, partnership is the word if we want to succeed. This center is a unique one because what we are doing, we are taking best of the students and taking them for research. They have one supervisor from India and one from Deakin. So what we are trying to do is bring the strength of both the countries. And these students, they spend some time in Deakin University, and therefore they get the skill set which is not available with us in India. So it is capacity building of our own researchers as well. So together we are walking on this long path of achieving sustainability in agriculture. So, and in the first phase, it was largely nanobiotechnology, but the next phase, because we also realized how important is sustainability in the field of agriculture. Green revolution, or whatever we have done so far in the field of agriculture, that was largely to meet the requirements of the rising population. We wanted to feed more and more mouths, and rather that challenge still remains because the amount of food which we require in by 2050, that's going to exceed what the mankind has consumed so far. So that is the scenario. The productivity has to go up, but at the same time it has to be sustainable. We can't afford our agricultural lands to become barren in years to come. And at the same time, we have to be conscious of the natural resources, the most important being water. Agriculture, again, we take it as a clean activity, but then what are the GHG emissions? Can we have a safer method of producing food and taking care of the environment as a whole? The other challenge, which you all are well aware of, and that is the changing climate, and which is going to have, unfortunately, negative impact on countries like India. So over here, how are we going to cope up? So that's a challenge before us. One thing which I would like to say, that we enjoyed the partnership, and I'm sure it's a win-win, because for the other countries in Australia also, let's look at what we bring on the table. I'll say Indians are very hardworking, they are very intelligent, and they are innovators. If we look at the software industry, the way it has developed globally, I'll say Indians have a lot to be proud of because they have contributed quite a bit in the software industry. We talk about climate change. Again, many of the solutions will come from the developing countries like us. Here is the market, because let's also see we have only one planet to live, and therefore, if the share of the developing countries which still have to build the infrastructure, they can go green. And because of the sheer numbers, if these countries remain unattended, I don't think so this planet will be good for even those in the most developed countries. You can developing countries, very important to get into partnerships and thereafter develop the products which suits the small and medium industries as much they do for the large industries in the developed world. So we look forward to moving ahead, and I'm sure the second phase will be far more fruitful. We'll be expanding into more areas, and thank you for confidence in us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dhawan. May I now request the panelists for the next session to join me?
Thanks for inviting me here to this really fantastic event. So, I'm heading TCS's Core Innovation Network. It's a network that I formed about 15 years back, at the time when Ramjanai was the CEO. And it comprises of academic institutions, startups, VCs around the world. I'm based in Toronto. I used to work here in India before, and we have about 100 plus academic institutions, about 2,000 plus startups in the network. And it's a network which has to be really built and nurtured. In co-innovation, with each of these institutions being very innovative on their own, it takes a lot to make sure that institutions work together. So there are two things which I wanted to make a mention of. One is these kind of partnerships. One is how do we define these kind of partnerships? And second is, what is it that makes it on click? So if you see the kind of partnerships, we have research partnerships on one side that we do with academic institutions, and we have got startups on the other side. The question of research is, what are the kind of topics that we want to pick up for research? What do we want to fund? That is a constant question that we all ask ourselves. The second is, for those research areas which are, let's say, TRL 6+, is it better driven by startups themselves? And we have got so much of IP that exists in the shelves of academic institutions around the world. How do we really look at bringing that to the forefront? How does the industry recognize it? Is a kind of a key question there. I'd like to take 1 minute more and just say that if you look at the disruptive kind of a lens, I use Clay's disruptive theory for this. There is one aspect of innovation which is innovation that sustains, innovation that makes organizations more efficient. But there is a second one, which is the area which is not consumption oriented, which is the kind of topic that we have a lot of us have talked today. How do we make India into a global hub of education? How do we get to the rural areas of India? And all these kind of questions take a different kind of a lens to look at. A lot of how we look at investing is to look at this area, which is the disruptive area, which is an area which requires multiple lenses. And I think that's what DC's co-innovation is all about.
Thank you very much, Raju. I'll come back to you with some questions. Dr. Kumar, let's hear from you in terms of your introductory remarks.
Thanks, Sophie. I'm last minute attendant. Vibha had to leave for some other important meeting. I'm Kiran Sharma. Just recently joined TERI about 3 months ago as director of the Sustainable Agriculture Program. Before this, I was spent almost 30 years in international agriculture research, working for International Crops Research Institute for the semi-arid tropics. And I was looking at the topic, the title here, international collaboration for research and development. And that's where I see, this partnership between TERI and Deakin, flourishing. That we already see, great results from coming from here, especially the sector of agri nanotechnology, micro research, and those are some of the sustainable solutions that we're already working, and some of these are on the verge of commercialization. And I see this partnership moving into, providing solutions to others, especially clean energy, in terms of more sustainability in agriculture. And we were discussing that how can we help Africa together? But that's where a lot of effort is required to make agriculture sustainable. So I see a great potential here between Deakin and TERI on collaborating on some of the global issues, especially around sustainability in agriculture. How can you bring in new aspects of clean energy, especially for agriculture? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kiran. Sanjay, Deakin also has been a good partner over the years with the Public Health Foundation of India. But I'm also interested in hearing, with COVID, one thing that has come across is how we need to look at the health sector, the health innovation, the health systems across board in the world, but more specifically in India. So your introductory remarks would be great.
Thank you, Ramneet. And I just wanted to mention that we cherished the collaboration with Deakin University and Public Health Foundation of India on several initiatives. My two specific comments. COVID-19 has taught us several lessons. But one of the critical lessons that we all learned is that our problems are global. And if we really need to respond to these global challenges, we will really have to collaborate on all fronts, including research and innovations. Comment number 2 is that you already mentioned in the session that when we look at the ranking of Indian higher education institutions globally, somehow our institutions are not there on the top. And one of the reasons is basically we probably lacked in research. And there could be different metrics of that, how do you measure research? That is one of the important. I wanted to mention in India now, the stage is set. The government is very proactive. Our national education policy has clearly articulated transforming our institutions and universities and research-driven institutions and universities. And therefore I see the tremendous opportunities for international collaborations in research and innovations.
Thank you very much. I'm going to come to you, Raju, and talk about how does COIN work? Can you explain to our audience a little bit? Because I know there are a lot of people in the room that would be very interested to hear what does COIN really mean to co-partners and what's the model? How does it work?
So we divide it into essentially 2 parts. One is the academic coin, and second is the emerging tech coin, which is the startups. When we come to the startups first, so we have a program called Coin Accelerator. We pick up about 100 odd startups per year, and we give a runway of 1 year for a very intense partnership so that their startup ideas can be demonstrated and proved in front of our customer challenges. So that's one kind of model. And startups are welcome. These startups are typically Series A+. Also, we do not fund startups by design because we think that there are a lot of VCs who do that job much more better. But this also gives us the ability to be neutral, to be able to ensure that every startup gets their space on the stage. The second, academic coin, we have a number of different models with each and every university. So one is the bilateral model between TCS and a given university. The second is more of a cluster-based model. Such as the one we have in Australia actually, the cyber security CRC model, where multiple universities are there together along with TCS, Cisco, and others out here in Australia. And then we are also looking at multi-country based models, which is kind of, I think we should look at as the next innovation of sorts in this space. The bilateral models work, as you know, in a certain way. It's funded by both the governments. There is this whole spirit of cooperation from a knowledge diplomacy perspective. And there is, we spoke about in the morning also on soft power and strength that this brings to the table. That is one kind of partnership which is works well for us also. But I'm looking at new models also as we speak. So I'll come back to that later.
Yeah, so I'd be interested in sort of driving a little bit more in detail on the new models, right? Because in India, if you look at the research and innovation space, there's a huge gap in between what the industry is looking at, what the academic research is, and what is the outcome. Of course, fundamental research is very important, but I think what we have to look at the outcome-based research. So how can COIN support that conduit between what industry can do with academia to come up with technologies that can impact society?
So we do it, I think, pretty effectively. We have had TCS research for about 40 plus years. As TCS, we were the first in IT industry meetings at Around. And then what we are also doing is we encourage academia to showcase what the kind of research we do on a continuous basis. We also share our challenges with them on a continuous basis. So these agreements that we have, for example, in India, with all the IITs, IISc, IIS, and others, we are doing a two-way continuous process of collaboration. It is very active. It is done by researchers themselves. It is not hierarchical. It is pretty much researcher to researcher driven. So TCS research has got a number of researchers, so they actively engage with not just Indian institutions, but institutions around the world. We think that the people, the practices, the culture, the process is an important ingredient in this whole thing. It has to actually be productive in nature, and that takes time and effort to build. It takes time and effort from both sides to do that.
Sure. I'm just going to come to you, Sanjay, and ask, in terms of the investment focus from the government of India in building a more research and innovation ecosystem in India, where do you see that going into the future? What would you like to see more of happen to transform the health area and the research, whether it is public health or health promotion or preventive health?
I think the principles that outline the collaborations are critical, and equity and complementarity is very relevant in the present context. So the collaborations that we talk between the universities and institutions, how do we bring the focus of equity is important. And equity not only in terms of partnerships and collaborations, but addressing the equity as a problem also. Because from the health perspective, so much of inequity in India, you take any random indicators from infant mortality rate to immunization coverage to any burden of disease for that matter. And therefore, the collaboration, the research, innovations and collaboration that the Indian institution should incorporate the equity component as an integral component of addressing challenges. The second important issue is we all recognize that science is sterile, it lacks the social relevance. And our policy would crumble on a cliff if they are not firmly placed on a pedestal of valued science. Research is really a tool. What ultimately benefits to the society is the knowledge. So how that knowledge helps us to contribute to the societal benefit. The purpose should be social, that how it benefits to our populations. And therefore all these collaborations, research and innovations should actually tell us that how it is going to benefit to our own people. unless that happens, what is the utility of all those things?
Right.
Thank you.
I think the benefit and the value addition is a very important part of the ecosystem. So my sort of other question for you, Sanjay, is that in your international collaborations, where do you see the gaps in actually ensuring that the collaborators are looking at an equal partnership? I mean, Deakin, of course, has been there, and lots of other partnerships that you have, but where do you see the gap, and what would you like to see more of from your collaborators internationally to come and support and work together for the mutual challenge that we have in India, but also in the rest of the world?
At times the challenges are related to sharing of resources, the principle of equity, but we have been fortunate at Public Foundation of India that we have been able to build rapport and the trust over the period of times. And one of the examples is our own future faculty program, through which we train our faculty in rest of the universities globally, and they were of the field, and we have been, and then we have been able to build a faculty pool, a national faculty pool for our institutions. So I think these kind of partnerships are beneficial for the countries because, and now even PHFI colleagues who have been trained, they are working in different schools and institutions in India. And therefore, it's not only the PHFI's capacity building, but overall actually we are contributing to the national political capacity building also. And I think from that perspective, we look at these collaborations, partnerships, which are beneficial in terms, and these partnerships where India also provides a lot of opportunities for that matter. Now, if suppose Australian institution, university wanted to do research in the context of infectious diseases, who would provide better place than India to actually engage? And therefore, looking at those strains that we will have to work around to take care of all those issues that we have to talk about in the context of it.
Right. I think that's a very important point. Dr. Kumar Kiran, it is interesting to set up this joint collaborative center with Deakin as a second phase of engagement with TERI. In the first phase, we did focus on the TERI Deakin nano biotechnology. I'm interested in your thoughts on the key and the critical areas of water, environment, climate change, agriculture. What would you like to see from Deakin that will help you build this center more sustainably over the future, and also to support the young generation in India to be a part of this journey? Because I think that we have to share the responsibilities, and we have to bring the young population of India on this journey with us. So what would you like to see more from Deakin and your other partners?
Thanks. I think, as you mentioned, the first phase brought us together. We understand each other much better now. We're collaborating with various partners from Deakin and vice versa. The new phase, I think we deliberately went along, move away from just nano. Nano is one component, nano fertilizer is one component of sustainable agriculture. Sustainable agriculture is a much bigger area. How do you bring new technologies to the resource poor farmers actually? 70% farmers in India are rain-fed farmers. So how do you bring technologies to them? And that's where I think we are looking at new areas of research, especially on translation part, translating some of the knowledge we have generated over the years, and then bring in, you were mentioning about startups. I think the startup ecosystem is very important. Now, agriculture is especially a risky area. Not many people would venture out. I've already noticed, I've been involved with the startup ecosystem for the last 15, 18 years in India. When you get applications now for startups, only I think less than 5% apply in agriculture. That just shows you need to be innovative, and you need to give some new ideas to startups, especially around the technologies we have developed. Things like micro-raising research, for example. How do you involve smallholder farmers?
Yes.
You bring the technologies together to them, you demonstrate, and also create small entrepreneurs who can actually make the last mile connectivity.
So I think that's a very important piece at the end of the funnel, that how do you actually make it really happen on the ground? Yes, absolutely.
But otherwise, you cannot do fancy science or academic institutions. great science.
Yeah.
But does that science reach the end goal?
That's right.
Especially the farmers. Maybe Australian farmers are very big, but in India, 80% farmers are smallholder farmers.
I think that's the challenge, to bring together the ecosystem that can actually have impact on the ground.
So that's where you need to bring different types of stakeholders, NGOs, startup ecosystem, universities.
Right. Coming to you, Raja, I'm interested also, you talked about the CRC model in Australia, which works very well, where you have a group of universities on a theme that is integral to their research and innovation. You have industry coming in, you also have government coming in. I know that some bit of it does exist in India, but it's not really a very strong model at the moment in India. Would that be something that would help build this ecosystem in India in a more deeper and a more outcome-oriented manner?
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. In India, there's a lot of research that's going on, and a lot of it is done along with, in collaboration with universities around the world also. There are a few examples where we have invested in. For example, material science. We have a product in material science for a computational materials platform, ICM is called, which is rooted in IIT Kanpur. But this is utilized, the technology that is being integrated is utilized by universities around India. And they have continuous workshops to share knowledge in material science, and this particular infrastructure that we created in IIT Kanpur serves as kind of a basis for it. There is need to definitely invest more into research, which can also expand beyond India. So what I would like to see is, research and collaboration not only within India but also with institutions around the world. And I think that would make the internationalization, which is a part of the theme of the conference, really come to life. I also want to comment on the social aspect, which was mentioned earlier. So we have an incubator for social innovation in Nasik called DISC, and where entrepreneurs who want to really try their idea get that chance. And it's fully funded by TCS organization. And this is meant for bringing new ideas into, which includes agriculture. Similarly, even with academic institutions, for example, IIT Delhi, they have got investments in rural areas like Root Tag, it's a part of IIT Delhi, along with many other institutions, IIT Bombay, etc. Where rural innovation is a part of the theme. So Professor S.K. Saha, Sangeeta Kovian is also a part of this, they'll be very happy to take some of these kind of ideas. So again, the main idea being the network, the strength comes from sharing openly about what we can do together. And I think that's what we should nurture effectively. All the organizations here, we should work together. We already have MOUs, by the way, between these institutions.
I'm sure.
We should work together in a very open forum so that these challenges can be taken up together by industry and government. That's where the strength is.
Right. No, I agree with you that I think at the end of the day, what is really important is to bring the ecosystem with government, with industry and academia together to have impactful research that will support our communities and our societies going into the future. And I think it's important for both the countries to come together. And Australia and India have done a lot in the past, but I think with the ACTA signing and the Australia report and the India-Australia report, it does talk a lot about the backbone of research and innovation and education, of course, underpinning the success of the relationship. So I think my next question is to you, Sanjay, in terms of coming around with our policies between the two countries, looking at shared curriculum, looking at internships, looking at the ecosystem around building a more robust partnership with
people in India and in Australia, whether they are universities or they are institutions of excellence, what do you think can be done more of from the Indian side? We had the minister speak earlier, where I think the commitment from India is very strong. But if we were to look at the 2 or 3 things that really need to happen to make sure that there is more collaboration with Australia across these themes, and we have shared policies, we have shared ecosystems that can actually have good impact. What would you like to see happen from that perspective?
From the higher education institutions perspective, now our national education policy and recent guidance that is coming up from the University Grants Commission provides several opportunities of the students exchange, sharing credits, and now the role of digital education also for that matter. And therefore I think going forward, it would be easier for the institutions in both the countries and collaborate on giving global and international exposure to the students. And it should happen both ways. The experience of global challenges, developing countries like India who provide exposure to Australian students, that what kind of challenges that globally we are confronted with. And similarly, Indian students visiting or completing certain credit work in Australian universities and providing them opportunities. More importantly, even the joint PhD programs where research is an integral part of the PhD program, where the India-centric research in Australian universities where the rigor of methods can be brought into the research, but actually the research problem is being identified here and solved here with the better translation into policy. And third important is that the focus of any kind of research that we reimagine and redesign in the context of both the institutions and university, Australia and India, we should focus that how it is applied, how it is translated. Because knowledge generation is one thing, but knowledge translation is different.
That's right.
I think both the universities from both the countries should focus on how the knowledge gets translated into. Because research gives you the things of discovery, but the ultimate satisfaction comes when something gets really translated for the benefits of the society. I think that should be kept in mind in the overall framework of designing the research into institutions.
Yeah, I think you made a very good point. Creation is one thing, but translation is the other. And I think the ecosystem must support both because they can't exist without each other. I know I'm conscious of time. I'm going to sort of go to the last question to you, Raju. In terms of the technology, what role can technology play in the research and innovation building ecosystems, specifically in a country like India?
When we look at knowledge creation, it actually, when we say technology, it always reminds me should be technology and society. Because it is the social capital, the cultural capital, what Dharmendra was also saying in his speech, which makes a difference. So, put it in a different way, we can't import a given, say, policy from one country and put it in another country and expect it to work. It will be dependent on the local society and the local culture. So I want to bring in this aspect of policy entrepreneurship, which is something we often don't talk about. We talk about startup entrepreneurship, about research, but I think what we are going through in India is actually requires the lens of policy entrepreneurship. We are looking at how to interpret policies, how to make the best out of lesson in National Education Policy 2020, and how we implement it. And there has been a lot of dialogue on that earlier in the session as well. Also the policies between countries, again, since it's about internationalization, is important. How do we interpret it and how do we implement it? So a lot of what we do in thesis is about understanding these policies and understanding the various stakeholders who are involved in both policy making and policy implementation. Also, when we look at policy, one more point is that they are evolving. Even the Minister of Education was open to hear feedback from people who are implementing. So policies change. They take a direction of its own, and they evolve based on what kind of feedback we give both to the industry and academia. So I think these are some of the elements that we go in trying to answer your question of how do we want to look at the policy changes in India from both industry and academic collaboration.
Right, and I think that you're right, that the change word is very important because policy have to be impactful and they have to really change as the requirement happens. Kiran, my question is really in terms of building tier 2 and tier 3 universities research and innovation system. When we talk about research in India, I know that it can be limited only to the top universities or institutions of excellence in India. I think that for India to be successful and to really focus and contribute, the research and innovation culture has to penetrate into our tier 2 and tier 3 institutions and cities and governments, and also looking at state and federal governments. So from your perspective in looking at tier 2 and 3 cities and universities, what change does need to happen?
I think the exposure needs to be there, especially when you tier 2 or tier 3 cities were sort of disconnected from the mainstream because of the distance, because of the reachability, conveyance. I've already noticed I come from the state of Himachal Pradesh, where virtually every place is disconnected. And some of the universities there I've seen, this was there at one of the most premier institutes in the country, IIT Mandi. They've got the best of the facilities there, but to reach the closest airport, they have to travel by road up to 6 hours. So I think we need, and especially considering the theme of this, the digitization,
Right.
I see a lot of opportunities actually, and we are already discussing with a lot of tier 2, tier 3 cities. I would say IIT Mandi is tier 2 institution, but it's in a tier 3.
No, I mean it's a fact. We've got
almost a
the
rural
main cities,
area basically.
we've got the allied
to
cities,
set
I
up.
would say.
So that's where I think this digitalization comes very handy. And I think we forgot one thing in this discussion was the big data.
Yes.
So there's so much data coming out from hardcore research, market research, trade, and how do you bring some of these farmers from close to the market, I would say, or an inclusive market-oriented development. And that's where I think if we have a good link between the institutions in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, the penetration of this data is much better. And also going back to the startup ecosystem, I've already been involved in some startups in IIT Mandi, for example, in the agricultural domain. And that's where I think we have almost weekly meetings. So that's a real transfer of knowledge and
into the system.
Into the system.
Right.
And to me, I think that's probably one of the best ways of taking your information, data, knowledge to tier 2 or tier 3 cities. And that need the most help in terms of that ecosystem and evolution of that ecosystem. That would be my approach.
Thanks. Yeah, sorry.
Just like to say that I read it IIT Mandi from here, and we need to having the standards every year. But also the second is data marketplace is important, I think, and we have a platform also there. Because absolutely right, there's so much data, and to figure out what is the noise versus actually data is an important thing. And how much of it is open data and how much of it is closed data which can be monetized. So it's a very important thing. It's a bit like how water is. We now drink mineral water instead of water, which is all over the place. That's how data has become now.
That's right, absolutely.
Yeah. But that's where the role of public sector institutions comes. How do you open up the data basically?
Yeah. How do you use and open the data and how do you put it to use?
Because most of the research you do in public sector institutions or universities is public good actually.
Yeah. Right.
So it's our duty to make sure that data is available to whoever wants to curate it or use it or develop algorithms you want to do. So that should be one of our goals.
My last question is to you, Sanjay. In the health sector, What are the top 3 challenges that India is going to face into the future?
I would say the first important is health system strengthening. It's so critical for us, and investment in health sector, particularly in public sector, is so important. And therefore that relates to the second important issue of spending on health is concerned. Out-of-pocket expenses in India are close to 70%. And therefore we need to see that how do we increase our spending in the health sector, particularly in the public sector, remains a critical issue. And third important problem relates to looking at the inequities in the health are concerned, because and they are so rampant and at times are so heavy. You take infant mortality rate in our particular district is 37 per 1,000, 5%. Adjacent districts is 73 per 1,000. The exchange, the Mewat is 65 kilometers from the parliament of this country, and the health indicators of Mewat in district in rural areas in Haryana, some of the indicators are so challenging that one needs to look at how do we, although there are attempts of looking at aspirational districts and where indicators are poor, but I think we must address inequity going forward for the overall protection growth in the health sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Raj, would you like to conclude remarks?
I do want to make a mention about the kind of research we're doing with Deakin, which is in cybersecurity. It is in the design of various protocols for critical infrastructure. We are also looking at the design of quantum safe protocols. Okay, is a new area that we put up with Deakin. So a lot of good research that we're doing here. We're looking forward to do more.
Thank you very much, and on behalf of Deakin University and TCS, I want to thank my panelists. I am sorry that we are rushing against time, but I do know that also people must be hungry because it is past lunchtime. We've got one last session to go, so thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time.
I'll ask my panel members to make their way up onto the stage. So you will be able to get out and fill those today. But we do, and I'm pleased to introduce my dear friend, Lieutenant General Arun Sani. Product development and scale. Given the current scenario, it becomes extremely critical for countries like India to propel youth and also to reskill our current workforce to acquire higher levels skills in technical and soft skills with a view to enhance their global employability. There's two broad areas where we talk about skilling. There's the pre-employment stage, which starts back in primary and secondary school and going through higher education or vocational education. And that's very much the skilling component. And there's during employment, our lifelong learning. And that's about upskilling and reskilling. I will ask each of our panel members just to spend 2 to 3 minutes on an opening remark, their opening comments I should say, and then we'll progress into some questions. And I'll start immediately on my right to Sanjeev. That would be my left to your right.
I thought that was different from Southern Hemisphere. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. So I have a couple of quick comments about skills. So my understanding, right, and I'm probably mostly right, maybe I'm wrong in some cases, is that any skill is imbibed with repeated practice. So if you want to sharpen your skills in mathematics, in order to clear the joint entrance exam to get to IIT, you better be practicing 10,000 questions in maths of the right degree of difficulty after, of course, studying the concepts. Right? And then physics and chemistry. If you want to be a sportsman and be, say, a skilled batsman, you better be having lots and lots of net practice and then practice matches. It's repeated practice. If you want to be good at writing, again, it's repeated practice. If you want to be good at any vocational skill, again, it's repeated practice. If you want to be a good marksman in the army, it's repeated practice. Study the technique, get trained, repeated practice. So skilling is about repeated practice. And there is some types of skill and some types of repeated practice you can do in a classroom, and there's some types that you cannot. You can learn only so much cricket in the classroom. You want to be skilled at cricket, you better be out of the field playing it. And that's how you learn, under the supervision of a coach. So, first you identify the skills, and then you figure out what can be taught in the classroom, or what can be invited in the classroom for repeated practice, and what kind of repeated practice needs you to be on the job as an apprentice. So 3 hours a day of classes and 6 hours a day of work as an apprentice in a workplace. And then you construct your learning model, your education model around what skill and what job you are training somebody for. And it will be therefore different for different jobs and different skills. If you want to be a plumber, right, there is so much you can do in a class, but a lot of it is about someone to lab and someone in the field, actually meeting customers and working under a plumber and doing it. So therefore the role of education then becomes to disaggregate this, identify what skills, what can be taught in a class and what cannot be taught in a classroom. And can you imbibe the field experience alongside that? And I'll stop here. But I think different skills are different and they require different models.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Melissa.
Thank you. So I think I want to frame this as a global challenge. Obviously we have a global skilled worker shortage, and it happens to coincide with a number of other workforce challenges, such as global competition for talent. And this is a problem in Australia. We actually have a worker shortage, serious worker shortage in a number of areas, technology in particular, and in the care economy, and certainly for advanced manufacturing. And we need these workers to drive our productivity and certainly our ongoing recovery from COVID and other things. This is also occurring at a time when the workplace is heavily disrupted by digitisation, as well as wage inflation, which puts an enormous amount of pressure on the workplace. And then globally, employers are experiencing difficulty finding skilled workers. The number of employers that are reporting difficulties has doubled over the last 5 years, with roles in education, technology, health, and the broader allied health and care economy, as well as engineering and advanced manufacturing, those roles most difficult to fill. So I think this conversation does need to think about producing workplace-ready graduates through regular education, but absolutely how we go about retraining and reskilling existing workers, and how we go about retaining our existing workers and attracting workers who we can reskill. Removing financial barriers, producing learning opportunities that are more flexible, that enable work-life and learning balance. But also, I think a critical one in this is alignment with the learner career motivations, and thinking about how they want to learn, particularly the more mature learner who might be balancing family and work. How do we produce learning opportunities that scaffold? How do we then stack those credentials And is it all about an academic approach to credentialing, or do we need to start thinking about skill stacking? So I would just leave it there.
Glenn, thank you very much for giving me the chance to join you all on the panel, and to Deakin for getting me here today. I think the theme of the session today is extremely profound. I think that can't be doubted or said that skill development is important for looking at rural employment. And I think the greatest thing which has been said quite a few times in the morning is I think the earth-shattering impact of NEP 2020. Where finally skilling, which used to be in the informal sector or on the digital platform, is now becoming part of the formal education system in India. I think that's the best change that has really happened. And why I'm saying this is because I remember going out to Australia for the first time in 2011, 2012, and I did get a chance to go and engage with the CSIR over there. I went to these small manufacturing hubs of startups that were there, and I was amazed that none of them had gone to the IIT and IIMs before they started their jobs. They were all people who had finished school education and had the skills which they had imbibed while they were there in their education, or maybe the initial stages of college education or university education, and then gone into startups and started developing. I think so. The skilling which came in the formal education system was extremely good, and I think that is where it's going to make a difference as far as India is concerned. Two challenges which I see. I think, as was said by from the speaker in the previous session, we've got a large workforce in India. We're looking at about 800 million people who are there in the workforce, aspiring to be part of the workforce or leaving this workforce. How are you going to skill these different generational sets? When I look at it in the army in 40 years, when you look at Generation Y, Generation Z, that their personal character traits are so different that the skilling and reskilling modules cannot be one size fits all. So I think that's where the challenge is going to be, that in this generational gap, how do you address these people? People at the age of 50, 55 are looking at a 15-year span, what do you skill them up with? And that's where you require this capturing his experiential knowledge into credits so that that can be amplified for him to become useful to the workforce. I think the second area which I feel really needs to be looked at and addressed is the challenge for the fundamental and the technological pedagogy that has to be worked out. I think when we saw the digitization happening, initially I think everybody looked at the cyberspace and said, "Jo IT karta hai, who does IT is now a guy who's going to look after cyber." I'm sorry, there was a different skill set. Cyber warfare came in, cyber theft came in, cyber law had to come in, CSIR, cyber security personnel came in. It's been identified. So there were skill sets that required to be identified. You had to work out a strategy by which the practical and the theoretical was mixed together and empower him so that he became employable. I think that was the greatest challenge that happened. Today we're going through the same phase. Climate change is coming in, you're looking at different ways of sustainable agriculture, and one of the areas you're looking at. If there is loss of jobs and areas, you have to see how do you look at climate justice, how do you look at climate law, how do you look at these issues now coming up. You look at zoonotic diseases that have come up with the pandemic, how do you look at the health sector addressing all this? It was said so in the last action. So I think the challenge for the universities would be making pedagogy, being dynamic to be able to identify the changes, be able to implement it. And I think what Sandeep said is we give them the practical experience to be able to do their on-job training while they're going through formal education. When I walk out, I walk into a job and I'm suited. Otherwise, you'll have to go through this long-drawn training capsules with your companies to sort of reorient you for really the job that you've been employed for. I'll finish there and we'll take on with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arun and Melissa. It's a beautiful segue to, in fact, the first question I had. But I wanted to add one extra piece to what you added around the different generations and how we learn. I think the other aspect to this is within a generation, different people learn in different ways. Some people are visual learners, some are more, of a written and more traditional way. And I think that's one area where we've been, across the education system, slower to adapt and accommodate those people that are more on that visual, in the visual learner space. But my first question was, how do we, and this is to all panelists, and I'll start with you, Sanjeev, how do we improve the job readiness of of our youth? What are the things that need to change in our educational system to improve their job readiness?
So, I think the first thing an education institution, especially an education institution of higher learning, believes it's training its students for employment. The first thing that institution should do is understand and figure out who its customer is. Now, your customer is not the student. Your customer is not the student's parent who might pay the fees, it's just the guy who's paying the fees. Your customer is not your other faculty. Your customer are not your alumni. Your customers are your employers. Because that is the organization that's going to take in your product. Right? And therefore, you must talk very closely to your customer, your employers, and say, this is what should I be teaching? Can you send in faculty as visiting faculty? Can we design a course to the IT services companies in India, and TCS is here. They spend 6 months, maybe 9 months training the engineering graduates that they hire, because they believe straight out of college they are not ready to be working on a client side. Now, why is that training not happening in Indian colleges? Why are those engineering colleges not collaborating with the IT services companies and saying, listen, the last 9 months we've done your program, you send in your faculty, and in the process our faculty also learn. So look, just the first thing, identify your customer. Your customer is the employer. Ask your employer, ask your customer, what do you want? And then do that. It's very simple.
Thank you.
So I agree, but I think we need to put some of the responsibility on employers too. I think they have, their customers are in fact their graduates. They're the ones that they want. And so it's in their interest to invest in the type of training that students do receive whilst they're studying, so that they are graduating job ready. I think much greater collaboration between institutions and employers is critical. There are certain skills that need to be learned on the job in the workplace, and the only way that employers are going to get job-ready graduates is if they actually open up their workplaces to students and enable them to come in and undertake meaningful internship type arrangements, or even industry research projects and so on. I think also when it comes to the older worker, the retraining, the upskilling, I think again the employer has a real role to play in that groups of learners as well, by providing that flexibility and the opportunity for career enhancement.
No, I totally agree with your points, but I would just put the onus on the university or the formal education establishment. I think the first thing that you really need to do is to provide soft skill education as part of the organizational academic training that you're going to be imparting and more technical training. I think soft skills is something which is lacking. And why I'm mentioning this is my wife ran a software company sometime for a few years before she sort of hung up her spurs. And I noticed that all companies require these people to be given those software. Whether it's English speaking, it is engaging with people who are multinational, and a multinational forum to be providing, then how do you understand and deal with different people of different cultures? I think that kind of education has to be taught, and that's where I think liberal education or liberal arts subjects coming into your university education is the first step that will happen with the right way. But I think that's one area we have to look at. And I think the second thing which I feel is this continuity of education that needs to be provided for skilling and upskilling, I think for the younger generation. I think universities, which have started, a large number of them have this alumni associations which provide this opportunity to grow. And I think the last thing which I would say, which is what the collaboration today shows of TCS with Deakin, is to provide that platform for people who are in the far off places to be able to get the best of exposure. And why I'm mentioning this is because I'm part of an organization which is called Sunstone University. and they picked up all these colleges in tier 2, tier 3 cities. So if you're sitting in Mumbai and giving a lecture, everybody else in these tier 2, tier 3 city colleges are all linked to listen to this man who's only available to come to Delhi or to Bombay and cannot come to some of these far-off reaches, like you said, in Himachal Pradesh. But if you've got the digital linkages there, the virtual platform for everybody to attend, and now with the Meta 2.0 coming in, you're going to have immersive classrooms. You can engage with the gentleman sitting in some far-off corner to be able to get the best out of him. So I think that's where we'll have to start looking at if you want to see this thing improving and becoming really providing them job ready and at the end of the education. Thank you.
Thank you. Some common themes in that around, particularly, and I know the opening up of workplaces through internships is increasing in Australia. We often call it WIL, which is work integrated learning, and the amount, and I think there's a big push right across Australia that every university in every undergraduate course offers these types of placements for their students. The challenge is finding sufficient placements to be able to do that. So I want to move to the next question that I have, which is around, and as a founder of Inaugural, I think your expertise here will be, and not the insights with the data that you have is great. What are the most in-demand skills that we're seeing at the moment?
So, Naukri is largely used for mid-career white-collar hiring. So, not entry-level hiring, not blue collar, and not outside the corporate sector. So, this is really only a slice of the economy that we're talking about when you talk about Naukri. Now, we run 110,000 clients annually, and look, the skills that are in demand are the skills that are written about right now. So, on the tech side, you have AI, machine learning, all that. But you know what? The bread and butter skills are still in demand. Whether it's sales, whether it's customer service, whether it's back office, whether it is what will now be called plain vanilla programming and not AI, and none of that. So while new skills keep emerging and demand keeps emerging, the 70-80% is still the bread and butter thing. So, we are talked about these big headlines. I'm not sure they account for such large numbers correctly.
Aaron? I mean, I really can't say that. What I would say today, those 2 or 3 areas that you really need to look at. As I said, I was mentoring a small startup in cybersecurity and one in robotics. I think the problem, as was highlighted earlier, I think getting people who understand to make these logarithms and to be able to operate and get this data structure, get the best out of it, I think that's a short supply I see. And I think we just had this thing in the papers 3 days back when there was moonlighting. I think we threw out some people, 300 people who were working. But the point today is that if 50% of the startup space and the tech space, which is looking at these new emerging and niche technology, I'm sorry you don't have people who can operate in that. So how do they do it? And I was quite pleased to see, I think US has a great model. It's got a platform, a gig platform. So I think this was run by an Indian whom I met just recently. And what that gig platform is, that anybody who's doing whatever job can go onto that platform, register himself for a skill set, and he can either function in that space so that he gets more exposure and improves upon his basic skill set, and can also make some money on the sideline, if that be the case. So I think this kind of stuff will have to come in, where we will have to see these skill sets, especially in the space of cyber, AI, IoT, if you're talking about AR, VR, all these things are great words, but who's going to be able to do it? I look at the army itself. We have so much of data, but we haven't structured that data. I mean, fine, big data analytics has come in, so maybe we'll make some sense out of that madness. But I think more importantly is getting the structured data, as somebody talked about open data, closed data. How do you decide this? I think that's where the data policies of the country will come in to help you to generate. So I think the challenge is these new technologies require different skill sets, and I think somewhere down the line, it'll be on the educator to ensure that at least he gives them the basic opening towards that. And then I think self-education will have to be part of the issue, and that large number of methodologies are there. Thank you.
and thank you. Thanks. We have, in our last 10 minutes, I just want to change the focus to the workforce and the current workforce. So, how do we in fact go about, well, firstly, what are the challenges with the current workforce? We've already talked about some of those in the other saying. It's around how do we adopt to a changing environment? How do we, whether that's a pandemic that we've just come out of, new technology, changing skill sets. What approaches are working, have you seen working in the reskilling and upskilling of existing workforces? Melissa, do you want to start this one?
Yes. So I think it's very different models. It's the shorter course, micro-credentialing type approach, but again, that does provide that flexibility because these are people who are working, so they're not going to necessarily attend classes during the day. So offering learning opportunities in the evening, having library or learning resources and learning support available of an evening. Perhaps some of it's face-to-face, it might be entirely online, or it might be a blend of both of those. Boot camps, where there's intensive residentials. I think, really it's sort of everything but the more traditional on-campus, full-time, 4 to 5 days a week type learning. I think it's everything but that.
Thanks. I can only just fall back on the example of the armed forces where 40 years that I spent. As you saw, the late 90s, early 2000s, you suddenly saw this change in technology. I mean, we were used to shooting and using a platform that is putting those crosshairs onto the target and being fired off. And suddenly you had this semi-automatic stuff coming in where you really didn't have to track the target, you just sort of pointed it generally in that direction, and it became automatic. But we suddenly had a workforce which is in India, our soldiers who were there, were not adapt to be able to move with times to get the desired level of efficiency. So what did we do? We looked at all these video games that just come into being. So in all our units, with people who were employed on all these on platforms which required this great skill coordination of eye-hand movement, we put them through video games in the afternoon. And suddenly you found that 2 years down the line, the whole lot of those guys could shoot straight there. So what I'm trying to say is, skilling and upskilling will require, for larger organizations, require some different kind of mindsets. It'll be quite specific to it. But I think, undoubtedly today, once you provide them the basic skill set, I think self-education, when we talk about professional military education that we're looking at in the Army, is something which is going to be ongoing. I think all workforces and all sectors, sub-sectors will have to have their own mantra for how it's going to be done. But I think undoubtedly, how you start them into the first level of jumping them to the next level, and then after that allowing them to grow in that. And for that, we allow people to go and do courses. We supported youngsters when it came into cybersecurity or in IT. You supported him financially to go and do a short course outside in the market. So he came back and then he sort of became the teacher. So you train the trainer kind of policy that comes into being. So I think that's something that will have to be followed by our organization, specific to their area of work and specifics.
So I agree with Melissa. I think micro-credentialing is a big trend. We are seeing that. We in fact invested in one micro-credentialing company which does micro-credentialing, specific narrow skills in a few sessions only for people who are working. And as a credential, it's not really a degree or a certificate that is get put in a CV, but it actually helps them do the job or get to the exposure. Right? That's one big one. The other thing the pandemic did is that remote learning. Right? No physical classes, remote learning, and we are also on the board of Shri University in Havana. We saw that at Shri University. We are seeing that now increasingly in tech companies. The way they are grown, the users grown. So
Yes, and in fact, in the Indian winter of 2020-21, that was, in recent times, my most busiest time in delivering corporate learning. And it was predominantly to India. We would be doing 5, 6 webinars, 90 to 2-hour webinars a week. And that was the busiest period we had. It was right in the peak of COVID and the lockdowns that we faced. So I think you're right, around how do you, and then there's that skill of how do you adjust the way that you deliver to an online mode. How do you gain that level of participation and interaction online when you also are battling with bandwidth issues, which hopefully 5G will help improve, as we found in Australia as we sort of progressively migrated across. So there's certainly some really, I think, really good elements around the workforce. We have around 5 minutes left, so what I might do in that 5 minutes, I'll just do a quick summary of where we are now, and then I'll just ask each of you for any final comment that you have. So we started off talking about our youth and what can we do to improve the employability of our youth. We talked about the digital platforms to enable greater exposure to leading academics and across different universities, to be able to have that element of practice as well as learning. The role that internships can play during studies to prepare people for their first job, and the significance of soft skills. We moved on and talked about the workforce and how do we reskill and upskill our workforce. And in there we looked at that fundamental shift. We talked about the fundamental shift in the way that learning needs to occur in a workplace through short courses, boot camps, the use of technologies, AR, VR, gaming. I'm not sure that my level of shooting on my games would qualify me for the Indian Army. So there's a different...
You got it right.
As a 50-year-old, I'm not sure I'll take me now. But that's what we talked about. But I would just ask our panelists for the final question. Any final comments to our panelists?
Please, sir. Look, I would like to suggest that education institutions, including Deakin and including Deakin's India partners, perhaps think of a new model. And let's take an example. Let's say you are teaching people sales skills, selling skills, right? I would take the university into the company, into the organization, into the employer, and say, listen, give us a conference room. We will take in 30-40 people where you will interview them before you come. So you participated in the admission process, right? We will train them for 3 hours every day, and for 6 hours a day, or 5 hours a day, they will work as sales apprentices in your company in the same building and going out to the field, right? And next day I classes, and then weekly reviews, right? And you have an 11-month program, and a couple of things will happen. Number one, the participant will have real work experience and a certificate which can put on his CV, which is saleable, marketable in the economic market. 2, he would hopefully have worked hard, he or she would hopefully have worked hard in your organization and done something useful, right? So you will benefit as a company. 3, you get a ready pool of trained manpower. And I assure you 80 to 90% of them will get absorbed into full-time employment in that company. So you embedded the engine of employment and training and relevant training into the organization. So I would recommend a model of this nature. I think it will work.
Thank you. Melissa.
Look, I'll just say 2 things. Just expanding on that comment, wouldn't it be great to bring industry into campus? So often we sort of look at where we send students out, but why not bring industry into campus? And I think the Australian vocational education training system does that very well, because they are in fact industry experts who come in and teach in the classroom, and it's experiential learning, hands-on, competency-based learning. I think that works. That's a very interesting system. And when you were talking about your model there, I immediately thought of apprenticeship degrees. They do exist. They are models that are being experimented with in the UK. The other comment I will make, and this is in relation to the upskilling of the more mature worker, is at the end of the day, they want to get some sort of benefit out of this ongoing lifelong learning. Some will learn because they love to learn. Others will find it a grind. They don't want to do this of a night time. They're busy, they're working hard, they've got family, they've got commitments. So I think it is important in all the conversations around micro-credentials that they actually contribute something back to the learner. And that's got to be in the form of some sort of a career enhancement and recognition. And so there we come to the wicked problem of credentialing. How do we credential learning that is the non-traditional type of learning, and how do we make that global?
Thank you, Melissa.
Maybe I just emphasize one issue. I think with the diversity of the workforce that we have in India, I think recognition of prior learning, which the government of India is also sort of putting some kind of systems in place, is the area where we need to focus. And if universities and education institutions can do that, whatever system of credit rating they give from whichever line of work you come, you might actually see their skilling, upskilling capability becoming much better and easier to implement. That's what I think.
Thank you. We could continue on, I wish we could, but we have reached our time. I would like to thank Sanjeev, Melissa and Arun for their time today. As I said, we could keep going on, and I know we wanted to, but we do want to keep to time. So thank you everyone, and I will hand over to